Picture for a moment a very old photograph of yourself. You are 5 years old. You had tried to ride your red bicycle down the steep hill at the end of your street, and you had lost your balance, and you had fallen, and you had scraped your knee against the merciless asphalt. There is an expression on your face that belongs to a child meeting physical pain clearly, fully, for the first time, a stunned look, almost an accusation against the world. The blood on your knee has already begun to dry, darkening into the color of a bruised cherry. Your mother is somewhere just outside the frame. In a moment she will come running with that stinging liquid whose smell burns the back of your throat, and she will press that famous bandage, the one with the white square in the middle, against your knee. You remember that moment, down to the nerve endings, the heavy smell of tar melting in the summer heat, the thin, rhythmic ache in your knee beating in time with your heart, the tight, anxious pitch of your mother's voice, the strange coolness of the bandage as it touched your skin, and you look into that faded square of paper with a deep tenderness, and you smile, and from somewhere inside you, the most natural, most reflexive, most unarguable little sentence rises to the surface. That is me, a lie, the person looking back at you from that frozen, two-dimensional slice of time, the one feeling that pain, breathing that air. That person is not you. That child is long dead. This is not a piece of literary decoration, and it is not a cheap trick of words. It is the blunt force of a biological, a neurological, an ontological fact, landing on your face like a hammer. The nerve endings that felt the pain of that fall, the blood cells that clotted there to close the wound, the atoms that built the irises of that child's eyes, not one of them is with you now. Not one. They have long since dissolved back into the world. Perhaps some of them hardened into the trunk of an oak tree on your street. Perhaps some joined an oxygen molecule in the air you are breathing at this very moment, and crossed oceans. Your body betrayed you, silently, deeply, and with absolute certainty, a biological betrayal. Because your body is a loud, bloody, relentless construction site that tears itself completely down and rebuilds itself from the ground up every 7 to 10 years. The lining of your stomach dissolves and remakes itself every few days just to survive the acid it produces. The face you love in the mirror sheds itself, cell by cell, every few weeks, and a new mask emerges from underneath. Even your skeleton, the part of you that feels most solid, most permanent, is endlessly torn down by one set of cells and rebuilt by another. As you sit here, a silent war of demolition and construction is raging inside you, and you have no idea it is happening. So let me ask you something. If you took a building and you replaced its bricks, its support columns, its windows, its mortar, its foundation, and even the soil beneath it, piece by piece, until nothing of the original remained, could you still call it the same building? Simply because the brass nameplate on the door had not changed. Your title deed may be the same. The genetic map at the center of your cells may be the same. But the building raised upon that map is no longer the old building. You are not the material continuation of that 5-year-old child. You are nothing more than a fresh colony that uses his name, that has seized his memories, that has quietly settled upon the ruins of his estate, an occupying tenant. And it is here, at exactly this point, that a famous ship sails out of the salt-scented harbors of the ancient world, a ship that has been cutting into the limits of the human mind for 2,500 years, and it descends slowly from the dusty shelves of philosophy, and it becomes a cold and bottomless chasm standing between you and your own reflection in the mirror. This is Werden. The word is German, and it means becoming, and that is what this place is for. The deepest questions philosophy has ever dared to ask, followed all the way down to the bottom, told from a single point of view. Because to question, to refuse the comfortable answer, to look straight at the things most people spend their whole lives avoiding, this is not some academic luxury. To question is what it means to be human. The unexamined life, an old philosopher once said, is not worth living. So if that is the kind of thinking you hunger for, subscribe and turn on your notifications so that none of the deepest philosophical content that comes after this is ever lost to you. Because what follows is not a lecture, it is a slow dismantling, layer by layer, of the most unshakable thing you believe in, the answer to the question, who am I? We will watch your body, then your name, then your memories, then the captain inside your head, and finally the face in the mirror reveal themselves one by one as illusions. But do not be afraid, because at the bottom of this demolition, what waits for you is not a collapse. It is one of the most radical declarations of freedom ever written. So let us begin. Let us return to that legendary ship. The story reaches back to ancient Greece. Theseus, the legendary hero, the founder of Athens, descends into the dark and treacherous labyrinth on Crete, and he kills the man-eating monster, the Minotaur, and he returns to his city in triumph. The Athenians want to make this victory immortal. They want to build a point of resistance against the destructiveness of time. So they take the 30-oared ship that Theseus sailed, and they anchor it in the harbor as a sacred relic. It is no longer merely a vessel. It is a monument to a victory, to an act of heroism. But nature, as we know, holds no respect for the monuments that human beings erect. The merciless chemistry of the salt water, the wind off the Aegean, the worms in the wood, they begin their assault on the ship. The timbers slowly begin to rot. And so the craftsmen of Athens, refusing to allow this slow erasure, begin a sacred ritual. Every plank that rots, every board that takes on water, they carefully remove. And in its place they fasten a brand new plank, identical to the original, cut from the same forest. The frayed ropes are thrown out, and new ones are strung. And this process does not take a year. It does not take 10 years. It takes centuries. Every year, a few more planks are replaced, and no one can say at exactly which moment the ship stopped being the old ship, because the change is so slow, so quiet, so insidious. And one day, on that ship gleaming under the harbor sun, there does not remain a single original splinter that the hands of Theseus ever touched. Not one rusted nail. Every single piece has been renewed. And yet the ship is still there. Still the same shape, still the same name, still in the harbor. And here is that simple question, the one that lands on the walls of logic like a stick of dynamite. This vessel standing bright in the harbor, this structure whose every particle has been replaced, is it still the ship of Theseus? If not a single plank of it is original, then what is it that makes it the ship of Theseus? Now let us make things even stranger. In the 17th century, the English philosopher Thomas Hobbes adds a dark possibility to this puzzle. He says, suppose a clever scrap dealer had spent all those years secretly collecting the rotten original planks that the craftsman threw away and storing them in a dark warehouse, and suppose that one day, using those old, decaying pieces, he reassembled the ship inside that warehouse, down to its original rusted nails. Now we have not one ship, but two. On one side, the ship gliding in the harbor, regarded as the symbol of victory, bowed to every day, but made entirely of new material, a counterfeit. And on the other side, in a dark and humid warehouse, a ship that is rotten and leaking and that no one looks at twice, but that is made 100% of the original wood, carrying the very sweat of Theseus, the trace of his hands. Now tell me, which one is the ship of Theseus? The wreck in the warehouse whose material is original, or the new ship in the harbor whose shape and place have stayed the same? And more importantly, which one is the real you? The you in that photograph, whose cells died and scattered long ago, or the you listening to this voice right now, biologically rebuilt from the ground up? To this burning question, the sharpest and most rebellious minds in the history of philosophy took a scalpel. They were the Sophists, and here we arrive at a distinction that lies at the very heart of the entire matter. The Sophist thinker Antiphon split the world into two categories. On one side stands physis, which means nature, and on the other side stands nomos, which means law, convention, custom, a name. The Sophists had noticed something that terrified the ancient world. They had noticed that a great many of the things human beings take to be sacred, eternal, unchangeable, are in fact nothing more than human agreements. What counted as true in one society could be false in another. What was holy in one age could look absurd in the next, which meant these were not laws of nature. They were rules that human beings had laid down. As Antiphon observed, with his cold and surgical mind, the laws of nature are necessary. You cannot escape them. To take on water, to rot, to fall apart, these are necessary. These belong to nature, but the laws of society, the names, the meanings, these are artificial. They are added afterward. They are nothing more than a borrowed garment, thrown over the truth. Think about it. According to the blind, deaf, absolute mechanism of nature, there is no ship there, and there is no hero. There is only a temporary heap of matter floating on the sea, made of carbon and wooden fibers, doomed at the molecular level to fall apart. Nature does not care about names. Nature does not know Theseus. Nature does not know victory or heroism or monuments. Nature knows only the laws of physics. The wind blows. The worms eat the wood rots. This is the merciless necessity of nature, with no purpose and no meaning behind it. But the human mind cannot bear this absolute chaos of nature, this idea of endless decay. It must believe that something is permanent. This is why the famous sophist Protagoras said that man is the measure of all things. To that heap of falling planks about which the universe could not care less, the human being takes his own fears and assigns a measure. He points his finger and gives it a name, the Ship of Theseus. And this name is not a law of the universe. It is entirely a human convention. It is a flimsy contract that human beings, helpless before the storm and time and decay, sign in order to comfort themselves. If the Athenians woke up one morning and said, "This is no longer that ship," then the identity of the ship would evaporate in that very second. Because identity does not live in the wood. It lives in the agreement. And your sense of self, the thing you hold so dear, it is exactly the same. Your biology, your falling hair, your renewing skin, your shifting networks of neurons, these are the necessary thing. This is nature, this is physis. But when you look in the mirror and say with such pride, your name, your titles, these are only a label, added afterward. This is nomos, a vast filing system, invented so that society can function. In the eyes of the universe, in the realm of nature, your sacred identity has no counterpart at all. While biological reality tears you apart, every second, the law of society pretends to hold you together, as though you were an unchanging statue. Now, this sense of nothingness is heavy enough to drive a sane person mad, because the human being cannot bear to live on ground that is constantly sliding. Think of it, when Heraclitus of Ephesus said that you cannot step into the same river twice, when he said that everything flows, that nothing stays still. A cold sweat broke out on the back of the ancient world's neck. The river changes, and the one who steps into it changes. And his radical student, Cratylus, went even further. He cried out that you cannot step into the same river even once, because the moment you put your foot into the river, both the river and you have already changed. Now the ground beneath our feet had vanished completely. And it is here that another giant takes the stage, Aristotle. And to rescue the human mind from this disintegration, he builds a magnificent suit of armor. He says that the thing which makes an object what it is not the material it is made of. The material is only a humble laborer on the lowest rung. What matters are two things. First, the design of the object, its form, and second and most important, the purpose given to it, its reason for being. Aristotle calls this telos, the final purpose. According to Aristotle, even though the planks of the ship in the harbor have all changed, its form has been preserved, and more importantly, the purpose the Athenians gave it, to be a monument to victory, has continued without interruption. And so, even though its material is entirely new, the ship in the harbor is the true Ship of Theseus. The rotten planks in the warehouse are merely a pile of wood because they have lost that founding purpose, that soul. And this is the invisible shield that lets us walk out the door every morning. A kind of cosmic anesthesia for the human mind. Even though our biology changes in order not to go mad, we assign ourselves a purpose. I am a good father, we say. I am an honest person, we say. Our beliefs are our form. Our goals are our purpose. And because the story we have written in our minds does not change, even though the body does, we accept the renewed stranger in the morning mirror with great relief in truth, our entire social order leans on this shield. The legal system would collapse without the assumption of a fixed identity. If all the cells of the man who signed a contract 10 years ago have changed, from whom do we collect the debt? If the person who committed a crime 20 years ago is no longer biologically the same as the person standing trial, on whom do we impose the sentence? This is why society clings so tightly to the fiction of a fixed identity, because without that fiction, neither morality nor law nor any promise could remain standing. They are all built upon the illusion of a stable self. But what if the inside of that armor is empty? What if that story is grinning at you as it lies? Because the human being, sensing that his identity is only a label, runs in a panic to his last fortress, memory. My body may have changed, you cry, but I remember that bicycle accident, the bleeding of my knee, the tenderness in my mother's eyes, down to my bones. Those memories are the unbreakable bridge between me and the child of the past. The English philosopher John Locke rested identity precisely here, on this bridge of memory. For him, what made yesterday and today the same person was not the material of the body, but the continuity of memory. As long as you remember, you are you. How reasonable, how innocent a defense, and what a terrible lie. Because modern neuroscience shows us this, the memory we take to be our most reliable shelter is, in fact, the most cunning, most unscrupulous liar inside us. We imagine memory to be a locked steel safe in the back rooms of the brain, an archive of read-only videotapes. We believe that we press play and watch the past exactly as it was, unspoiled, but it is nothing like that. Scientists call it memory reconsolidation. And this mechanism exposes just how fluid, how corrupted our memories truly are. Here is the thing. Every time you call that accident to mind, your brain does not take the original file down off the shelf and play it back untouched. Instead, your brain takes that memory and breaks it into pieces like a film editor, cutting and splicing. It blends that memory with your present mood, your present beliefs, the present needs of your ego. It quietly deletes the inconvenient details. It adds false details that never happened. And it saves the memory again in its new distorted form. Your memory is a living document that you edit without realizing it every time you open it, and then press save again. Every act of remembering is in fact an act of rewriting. And this has a deeply unsettling consequence. Scientists have shown that the more often you recall a memory, the more it has been distorted, which means your most vivid memories, the ones you are most certain of, they are, paradoxically, the ones you have changed the most, the ones that have drifted furthest from reality. Because with every act of recall, you have brushed another coat of paint over them, and that first original moment is long since buried underneath. So the film that plays in your mind when you remember that accident years later is not the truth of the event, it is the latest edit you made. Perhaps over the years, your relationship with your mother broke down, and your consciousness quietly erased the tenderness in that memory and replaced it with a cold expression. Perhaps today you need to see yourself as a perpetual victim, and so you made the pain of that accident far more dramatic than it was. You rewrote your own past as propaganda to justify the identity you hold today. Because your fictional self does not want to look back and see gaps, contradictions, meaninglessness. It needs to see a consistent hero's journey. And so, even the past self whose pain you weep over is not the real child who lived. It is a fictional ghost invented by your present mind. The ship's logbook is forged from beginning to end. So then, if the planks have dissolved, if the name is a made-up label, if the logbook is full of lies, then let us go down into the deepest part of the mind. Let us break down the doors and enter the captain's quarters of the ship. Where is the ruler who makes the decisions, the one who begins every sentence with that proud word, I? Where is the sovereign mind that Descartes placed upon the throne when he said, I think therefore I am? Let us go and see it with our own eyes. In the 18th century, the Scottish philosopher David Hume did exactly that. He withdrew into a dark room, and he turned all the projectors of his attention onto the thing he called, with such confidence, He entered the captain's quarters, and inside there was no one. Whenever Hume tried to touch that he never met a fixed single being. Instead, he always found something passing, something temporary. A faint rumble in his stomach, a chill on his skin, a flash of anger without cause, a memory, a feeling. He said, whenever I look most intimately into what I call myself, I always stumble upon some perception or other, of heat or cold, of light or pain, But the eye that observes these perceptions beyond them, I can never catch. It always slips away. Hume realized that his mind was like an enormous theater stage. Actors came and went, scenes changed, but there was no director of that stage, no owner. There was only the stage itself. And so he declared his shattering conclusion. The thing we call the self is not a fixed being. It is a bundle of perceptions following one after another, with no owner. We are not an object. We are an optical illusion, born of a flow, a traffic. Just as a fire, spun quickly in a circle, looks like a single solid ring of light, we too are a false sense of wholeness, created by the swift flow of perceptions. But the one who would truly raise this fortress to the ground was the philosopher who is the compass of this channel, and of this entire line of thought, Friedrich Nietzsche. Unlike Hume, who entered the captain's quarters, Nietzsche does not find the room entirely empty. In his work, Beyond Good and Evil, he brings down a heavier hammer, and he confronts us with something far more disturbing. He says that the self is not a single sacred soul. The self is a chaotic inner parliament, in which drives and desires and ambitions are locked in a constant struggle for power. It is a multiplicity. Consider this, because it is unsettling. Inside you, there is no single I. On the contrary, inside you, there is an assembly, a you that wants to start the diet, and another you that wants to eat the cake, a you that decides to wake up early, and another you that hits the snooze button, a you that wants to finish the work, and another you that wants to put it off. These drives are forever at war with one another, choking one another to seize the wheel, and whichever one wins in a given moment, that is the one you call I, the you who decides on the diet in the evening, and the you who opens the refrigerator at midnight are the same you. So which one is the real you? That is the point. None of them, and all of them, because there is no single rational captain at the helm. There is a loud quarreling parliament. And what is it that enslaves us, that makes us believe we are a single R? According to Nietzsche, it is the very structure of language, of grammar, because our language looks for a subject in every sentence. If there is an action, it says there must be someone who performs it. And so we too imagine that behind all the chaotic drives inside us, there is a single I that governs them. But this is a trick that language plays on us. And here, Nietzsche gives his famous example. The thunder rolls, and we say, the lightning flashes. When we form this innocent sentence, the sly structure of language creates an illusion in our minds. We imagine that there is a separate, mysterious thing called lightning, which then performs the act of flashing. First there is the lightning, we think, and then the lightning does the flashing. But can you separate the lightning from its flash? They are the same thing. There is no lightning sitting up in the sky, planning the act of flashing. The lightning is the flashing itself. When the flash is over, there is no lightning left or waiting off to the side. There is nothing. The lightning is only that act. And Nietzsche says, just like this, behind a person's actions, there is no mysterious subject standing apart, planning them. In his thundering words, there is no doer behind the deed. The deed is everything, which means you are not a noun. You are a verb, drawn out without pause, alive and bleeding. Descartes was wrong. To say I think is a grammatical error because it assumes there is an I separate from the thinking, behind the thinking. But the truth is simply this: thinking is happening. There is no captain, there is only the turning of the wheel. There is no fixed being, there is only a relentless burning becoming. So then, if there is no director inside, if the doer is a grammatical lie, then why do I feel so whole, so bounded? If inside me there is only a quarreling assembly, why do I wake in the morning feeling like a single piece and not something scattered? Where did this concrete bounded I come from? The one who chooses which shirt to wear, who hits the snooze button. It is here that we dive into the dark waters of psychoanalysis, and we meet the singular thinker of the 20th century, Jacques Lacan. And Lacan tells us something startling. That sense of wholeness did not come from inside you. It is a plan, stolen from the outside, from others. He explains it like this. When a human infant comes into the world, it has no control over its limbs. It experiences its own body, not as a whole, but as a chaotic heap of limbs. The hand goes one way, the foot another. It is a kind of scattered state. The infant does not feel itself to be a whole. It lives inside a fragmented, uncontrolled, broken experience. This is a kind of silent nightmare. Until that famous moment arrives, the one Lacan calls the mirror stage. When the infant is held up before the mirror, what does it see? A smooth, bounded, flawless silhouette. An image that looks whole, unified, in control. A wonderful wholeness, the exact opposite of the fragmentation it feels inside. And the infant, in order to escape that fragmentation, makes an enormous psychological leap toward that stranger in the mirror. And it says, in effect, that is me. I am that whole, that perfect thing. But here is the terrible truth. That wholeness is a vast lie, because that image is outside. It is inside the mirror. It is outside of you. The self did not grow organically from the inside out. It was imported from the outside in by swallowing that stranger in the glass. So the ego you are so proud of is not your truth. It is an orthopedic armor put on in childhood to cover the terror of the fragmented body. In a sense, you are a stranger in your own house. The one who makes the decisions is not you. It is a ghost, trying to protect the wholeness of that image in the mirror. You did not design the ship. That plan was installed in you from the outside, by the culture you were born into, by your language, by your family. Before you had even learned to say I, others had already designed an I for you. And now, let us bring all of this together. My body, a heap of planks, rotting under the blind laws of nature. My name, a made-up law. My logbook, a lie, written by my memory. In the captain's quarters, there is no doer, only a parliament, devouring itself. And myself, an imported armor, stitched together out of the mirror. So if there is no I, if I am no fixed substance, then why should I wake up tomorrow morning? Is this not a black nothingness, a collapse? No, never. And it is here that the immense intelligence of philosophy shines, precisely when we have struck the very bottom of this nothingness, when we step out of that static world of being and into the loud, bright construction site of the philosophy of becoming, of Werden. All of this demolition turns suddenly into a radical declaration of freedom. Nietzsche leaves us alone with his most chilling test, the eternal recurrence. He asks, this chaotic, ever-changing life you are living, this ship with its rotting planks and its forged memories, would you be willing to live it again, over and over, forever, with all its pain, all its mistakes, all its shames, the same life, countless times more? If a demon came to you in the dead of night and offered you this, would you curse your fate? Or would you say to that demon, you are a god, and I have never heard anything more beautiful. This is a test of how fully you have claimed your own life. And true freedom is this, to say yes to the fire of becoming with every cell of your body, to love your own destruction and your own rebuilding with great passion, instead of fearing change, to become change itself. This is what is called amor fati, the love of fate. To stop fighting against your rotting planks and to celebrate that you are that very change, that flow, that becoming. The fact that you are no fixed self is not a curse. It is a gift, because what is not fixed can transform. What is not finished can be rewritten. What is not a statue can still be carved. Remember the shattering words of the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. The essence of a table is settled before its existence, because the carpenter makes it for a specific purpose, designing it in advance. The table cannot choose what it will be. It is not free, but in the human being, existence comes before essence. You are first thrown into this world as an empty nothingness, with no ready-made definition, and only afterward do you define your own essence, through your actions, through your choices, because you have no fixed nature. Every choice you make recreates you. In that very second, you cannot say, this is just how I am. I cannot help it, because there is no such fixed you. You are nothing other than the sum of your actions. Whatever you are doing, that is what you are, nothing else. This is why you must throw out that false piece of advice from the modern self-help world. Find yourself. Because there is no hidden, ready-made self buried under the ground waiting to be discovered. There is no essence to dig up. Instead, listen to the most powerful command in all of philosophy. The phrase that Nietzsche took from the ancient Greek poet Pindar and made his own motto, Werden, did you beast, become who you are, do not find yourself in the endless construction site of becoming through your actions. Create yourself without pause, because you are not a treasure to be discovered, you are a project to be built. And this command, become who you are, is the very heart of the word that gives this channel its name, Werden, becoming. And now, with this new awareness, look back at your past, at your old photographs, at the ideas you once defended with fire, but that today strike you as crude. And when you feel that warm flush of shame rising in you as you look at those memories, do not see it as a wound, because that shame, that is your greatest victory. Think about it. If a person at 50 still takes pride in who they were at 20, still holds the same opinions, still finds that younger self flawless, it proves that their river has frozen over, that they refuse to replace their rotting planks and became a wreck sinking in the harbor. It means they did not move an inch in 30 years. It means they learned nothing but to feel shame at who you used to be, to find that self naive. That is the absolute proof that your present consciousness has risen, that you have surpassed yourself, that shame is not a regression. It is a sign of altitude, because only the one who has climbed can see the low place they left behind. A snake, when it can no longer fit inside its skin, sheds it. And it does not turn back to weep over the dead skin. It does not see that old skin as a loss, because that skin had become too small to contain it. Your past identities, your narrow old beliefs, are the dead skins you have shed. They are the shells that protected you for a time, and then grew tight. They are the old, rotting planks that carried you to today. Be grateful to them, because in their time, they did their work. But stop forever mistaking them for I. Do not cling to your old selves like a body clings to a corpse. And do not be afraid to leave them behind, because change is not bloodless, and it is not painless. Construction sites are dusty, loud, and dangerous. When something is torn down, dust rises. When something is built, there is noise. But remember this, only graveyards are perfectly silent. And only graveyards never change, because there, nothing is left to build. Dust and noise are the sound of life. Silence is the sound of death. And so, at the end of all this storm, the Ship of Theseus stops being a logical puzzle, and it becomes the most honest instruction manual for living. Yes, the planks rotted. The name is a made-up label. The logbook is forged. In the captain's quarters there is not a single doer, but a warring assembly. An endless act with no actor behind it. And the design of ourself was imported from a stranger in the mirror. Every foundation we believed unshakable has collapsed one by one. But here is the magnificent turn. When you free yourself from that leaden weight called I, the chains break too. That fixed self was not a fortress protecting you. It was a prison holding you. Think about it. If you are a fixed, unchanging self, then you would be the prisoner of your past. You would be condemned to say, this is how I am. This is how I have always been. This is how I will die. But if there is no fixed self, if you are a constant becoming, then you can be reborn in every moment. Every choice is a new beginning. Your past is not a fate that defines you. It is only a shore you have left behind, and the ship is the same. Once it is freed from the weight of I, it stops being a dead monument rotting in the harbor, worshipping the past. And out on the open sea, it becomes a magnificent and defiant verb, wrestling with the waves, cutting through the wind, rebuilding itself ceaselessly, even as it sails. So tomorrow morning, when the alarm sounds and you stand before the mirror, look closely at that reflected face. Look at it, knowing that it is a fiction that came from the outside, that it has no soul, independent of its actions, that it is the remnant of yesterday's person, and smile at it fearlessly with an unshakable joy. Accept that reflection, not as an unchanging mask, but as the material of the project you will build today, on the construction site, because the question, who am I, has no single answer carved in stone. It cannot, because even by the time you have finished asking the question, The chemistry of your blood has changed. The river has flowed on, and you have already become someone else. The captain is dead. The ship is coming apart. And believe me, the ocean for exactly this reason is more free, more uncharted, and more immense than it has ever been before. So raise your sails and affirm your becoming. Become who you are.